Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the FlyWoo Firefly Hex Nano. Yeah, that's a GoPro, a naked GoPro up there, and this sucker has 6 motors, and it's kind of remarkable. I haven't flown a Hex before, so I have nothing to compare it to, but you know, it's got 40mm props in there. I've flown a lot of those props. But let's address the elephant in the room. Yeah, I have new glasses. These were overwhelmingly the choice of the eye doctor's staff. We picked out about 10 different pairs. I had my wife on a FaceTime call, and she was giving her vote, and everyone picked these. So hopefully it's something that we can all get used to. I know that my 2 daughters are struggling with it a little bit. So pretty new. It's a little bit weird to me. I tell you one thing I really like about them is I don't feel like I'm looking through a tube anymore. I don't have that sort of frame outlining my vision. So the clear frame does have that benefit. But guess this is what I looked like for a while now. Powering the Hex is 6 1202.5 5500 kV motors. The props are quad-bladed 40mm HQ props. And yes, that's as far down as I could get the props. Inside the flight stack here, we have an F411 flight controller. We have a 13-amp ESC, and the VTX on top can go up to 450 milliwatts. FPV cameras, the Caddx Ant Lite. It does come pre-wired for an HD camera along with this mount. The mount, as well as the original connector, which I have swapped out, is for the 1R camera. But I did fly it with my Hero 6 that is naked. XT30 for your battery connection. We do have a capacitor right down there on the ESC pad. We have a circular polarized antenna that mounts up here to this little mount, which doubles as well as your control link receiver. I have an FrSky XM Plus. I presume that the hole through the middle is if you had a Crossfire receiver. The bottom plate is 1.5mm. Battery lead is zip tied down, so I definitely approve of that. The foam pad on the bottom is just that, it's foam, it's not rubberized. And the battery strap doesn't have a buckle. With my naked GoPro, it weighs 91 grams. The recommended battery is a 450 milliamp 4S battery, which brings the weight to just over 43¼ grams. Without the naked GoPro and its mount and screws, it weighs 62.8 grams. And again, with the recommended battery, it weighs 115 grams. The mount has a little nut that is a nylock, and it does seat down in the print. I used this tiny little flat screw. Go right through that hole in order to secure the mount. Of course, I used the front 2 pieces to mount it as well. It also comes with an Insta360 Go mount, but not for the 2, for the original. A couple extra screws and the original end that came on the wiring. By the time you put all the props on, you only got 2 left. An accessory bag full of screws, washers, and nuts. 2 zip ties, a spare battery strap, a little reminder where you can find the manual and a few warnings, and your flight stack information. We are going to start off with a super windy 27-mile-an-hour winds, according to the weatherman, and gusts that probably go into the 30s. But it was sunny and it was warm. But I picked this flight because it's one of the few flights that I actually flew fairly well. You know, sometimes we have those days. And I think it's fairly surprising having something like this. Of course, it's got some weight. It's got 6 motors to it. But I was impressed with how it flew. Maybe I'm just a noob when it comes to flying Hexes, but I really didn't expect this to be more than just kind of a cruiser. And as you can see, I'm running it around the yard just fine, doing the things that I tend to do in the backyard. No real problems. And the flight time is really impressive. I certainly did not expect the flight time to be 4 minutes. Not a solid 4 minutes, but pushing that 4-minute marker with my particular flights. So I think those things are pretty dang remarkable. It's also, you know, fighting the wind some direction. So if you have a nice calm day, I wouldn't be surprised to get well over 4 minutes, depending upon how you fly. You know, I do several different punch outs. I go both ways over the house. I have the little punch out over the bush. I guess it's not little. I get 20 feet or so above the house on those punch outs. Shorter and longer punch outs are happening all over the place. That's kind of the story as it goes here. When I fly around the house, I tend to do some similar things from time to time, things that I enjoy doing, things that I do when I fly, not for review. So it's something, you know, it was new to me and exciting that it flew so well. I was pretty pumped. I have not crashed this much, so my primary concern about this is that 1.5mm carbon, and how's that going to hold up in a crash? You know, it could hold up great. We've seen frames in the past that have super thin arms, and they don't break all that much. Of course, everything's breakable. I think over the years we've seen a couple frames that have come out and made the claim they were unbreakable, and and that lasted not very long because someone found either a way to break it or it just got broken through natural flight. So everything's breakable. How breakable is this one? Time will tell on that. So we're just going to have to hold our breath a little bit and see how it goes. Of course, it's going to be more expensive. You've got, you know, extra components. You've got an ESC that does 6 motors. You've got 6 motors. You've got more props. But I think it's cool because it's a micro. You know, I'm very biased when it comes to micros, and this is the first micro hex that I'm aware of. I'm sure somebody has built them before, but as far as a company making a micro hex, this is the first that I have flown and that I've seen around. So that's pretty exciting development for me and those of you that like micros just like I do. So we're just a little over halfway through the flight. One of the questions I have right away is, you know, if you're a micro guy like me, have you looked or built the hex? And what did you think of what you built, if you built one, or what do you think of this one? You know, this is analog, so it's if you're already jumped on the if you're already part of a flying HD, whether it's DJI or Sharkbite or something, does this have any sort of draw for you? Is this something that you might, you know, get because it is analog? I'm interested in knowing a lot of different opinions. It helps me kind of scope out what the community and the market's doing. You know, if I do a build, how interested you might be on a particular build when I get feedback like this. The grass is greening up. That's a good thing. We have had, I think it was about 6 days of winds about like this. Just today I was out back flying a little bit. Oh, the flight's about over. Here, I'll talk about today's flight when we get to the GoPro footage, which is next. You can see there we've ended the flight at just under 4 minutes, and our battery is just a touch under 3.5 volts per cell. So maybe 3-4 seconds too long on that flight this particular time. This is our GoPro flight. So it's got the Hero 6. FPV stabilization is turned on. I'm going to do some cruising, and then I'm going to kind of fly like I traditionally fly. You can definitely feel the additional weight. I mean, in micros you always can. So its abilities as far as aggressive flight performance gets muted by that weight a fair bit. I was still pretty happy with the fact that this tiny little package running 40mm props was able to handle the GoPro in a fairly aggressive flight scenario. So that was pretty good. But I was talking about my flight just today at lunch. This one's actually much calmer. I got lucky. I think I must have flown 7 or 8 packs this time, and I caught one of those breaks where the wind just kind of settled in. A lucky break for me. It was the only pack of the 7 or 8 where the wind calmed down. But I was out over lunch today, and I caught another scenario. I was actually just tuning a quad that it'll be coming to the channel sometime, you know, down the line a little bit. But I was really frustrated with how the wind was blowing. You know, every time I get the car, the last week or so, we get high wind warnings for your county, and you know, we get winds that gust well over 30 miles an hour. Just kind of changing the seasons, the wind blows them in. But I caught just about one full battery that was relatively calm. I would say it was under, say, 10 miles an hour. And then, you know, right at the last 15-20 seconds of flight, the wind just came barreling in. I was like, oh my goodness. Thankfully, I didn't have my little audio camera out on its tripod, because I have found that sometimes that little camera that I use to record the audio that I blend into the flight footage, it gets blown over, and of course, you know, that's no good. It hits the cable and it has the possibility of cracking the screen, or maybe worse, breaking it altogether. But so you see the flight footage here getting more aggressive with the GoPro. This is another point where I'm kind of, you know, you might not like this GoPro. You know, the GoPro 6 is old. It's got a little bit more of that warped view that we don't really see out of the newer GoPros, but it's what I have. It's what I can demonstrate it with. But what do you think of now? The flight performance, carrying that extra weight? Did you leave your comment? Are you working on it still? I already said I was impressed that this just wasn't a cruiser. I really thought it was going to be a non-prop guarded Cinewhoop. I had no idea that it would fly this well in a more aggressive or acrobatic, aerobatic, excuse me, manner. I really didn't expect that. So that was a nice surprise, and it's always fun to get surprises, right? So hopefully you're just as surprised. Maybe that's something I should ask you. We've seen Facebook images, and I'm sure there's been images on Instagram and other social medias and platforms. When you first saw them posting this, what did you think this was? What was your gut reaction? Now that you've seen it fly for 5 or 6 minutes, what do you think now? Is it the same as what you thought? Is this exactly what you expected? Or is it quite a bit different? Or is it completely blown your mind? I am a little disappointed it didn't come with any stickers. You know how I like to say, and stickers. Everybody loves stickers, but in this case, it didn't. But maybe the retail boxes will have stickers. Okay, we've landed. Let's go back to the desk. Let's look at a few more things here. So hopefully you've left some feedback for me and others that might be coming to the channel about those questions that I posted. It's also worth noting that this does come in a INAV version, and it's got like a small GPS on top, a little stack that's up here. I don't have that yet, but that'll be coming down the line. So if you're an INAV person or if you're interested in INAV, you might want to check that out. Of course, as always, links down in the video description. And they've got a promotion going on with this right now. You get 5% off if you order between May 1 and May 5th. And I'm certain that's only when you order from FlyWoo Direct. You can choose your vendor. I'm sure we'll see, launch day, the vendors will all pop up with their particular stock and retail that they're carrying. They also have a prop guard that they're working on, and I'll put an image of it right up here. But that prop guard, if you order between May 1st to May 5th, you'll get the prop guard as well. So if you're interested in the prop guard, we didn't get to see how that works out right now in my flight because I don't have one. But if you order one, it's an extra perk if this is something that you saw and you're interested in. Something extra that you get, plus the 5% off. Now let's go down to the desk. We'll take a little bit of a finer look. I want to take a moment just to show you the connector that it comes on. And it did have a tag associated with this that it said it was for the 1R. I have since thrown that tag out because I kind of tore it off the wire. But this is the original connector that it comes with. So if you have one of those cameras, that might work out for you just fine. I am a little bit concerned because I don't see the product listing right at this time. That in my box this says gift, so double check the product listing to make sure these items are included, as I believe they will be. But this part makes me think maybe not. As far as the frame thickness goes, that can be a concern. We've already kind of touched on that, but the arms are fairly flexible. It's only 1.5 millimeter. I don't know how well I can show you this, but they're pretty flexible. I didn't notice in flight that things weren't sharp, or I thought I was getting any sort of vibrations from the thinness of the arms. So I think maybe with the weight and the lightness of the motors out here on the end, maybe they're very well balanced and smooth motors that we don't suffer from that. Of course, it felt good in flight. It felt like it was well tuned. I really didn't have any complaints. Of course, you don't have any camera protection. The camera sticks outside of the TPU print. I think that's something they could have changed. Just extending the print out ever so slightly would have given us some protection. Of course, the Caddx Ant Lite is also a pretty wide field of view camera, so that would have been a very fine margin there. Also, the mount that it comes with is it's got a single angle. Of course, you can find these mounts all over the place. Whether you print your own or you design your own or something like that. It's just, in my case, I flew it just as this was. I didn't try to print my own and change the angle or anything like that. I would have thought, and maybe just the distance, that the motor wires would have been taped down, using some of my favorite tape that I put in every video. It's in the listing of all the things that I use. I found after many poor purchases the tape that I like, that it sticks well, it's sleek, it's not hard to handle, it's not fuzzy, so it doesn't collect dirt and debris. Yeah, but we see it on a lot of bind and fly quads, but that was something else I was a little bit surprised by. I do approve of the fact, as I said in the quick specs, and that's why I mentioned the quick specs, FlyWoo is the second company that I'm aware of that's actually doing something to secure the battery lead down to protect you from a situation where the battery gets ejected and then it pulls the pads off the ESC, and then you have sadness and more money out of your wallet to buy a replacement. The receiver that come in mine, of course, was an XM Plus. It's pretty easy to manipulate it around. You just take a tool and just kind of move it around. So when it comes to the binding process of plugging in a battery while you have that button pressed down, not a big deal at all. You can see from the front that their mount, they actually cut the sides out. It's not important, I don't think, in flight that they did that. So if you redesign the mount for camera protection or something, I'm not certain that's needed. You know, is it got the potential that an arm would move up and possibly hit that? Maybe that's why they cut that out. But I just noticed that it's also a weight savings, just to try to avoid some extra TPU on there. I think we could have used some antenna tubes, but this works. I don't have a lot of complaints with antenna tubes. That can cause problems if you're packing a bag to go fly, because then you've got these tubes stacked up and maybe you're trying to put more than one quad in your bag and the tubes cause problems. I don't know. It's very, very rare I pack to go fly. They put a nice capacitor on there. It's got a good, strong VTX on it. Smart audio capable. Everything was all set up. Oddly enough, the Betaflight setup did have a bunch of GPS stuff. I suspect that was something they were tinkering with, was coming up with a GPS version for Betaflight, so yours might not. This is, early production, should be ready for sale when you see this video. But they also have that INAV version, which I don't know anything about INAV, so I'm pretty interested in taking a look at INAV and kind of experiencing that for the first time, so that'll be coming in the coming weeks. But if you're already familiar and you like INAV and you like what you saw, then there is that INAV version. I would have preferred to be able to try out the prop guard just so I could show it to you and I could get some feel for it and maybe have something to say about it other than it's available. But you've already seen how it flies. The prop guard is going to have an impact on the flight, just like with our whoops of any sort. When you have all these straight edges around all of our quads, and they're trying to move in the direction they're trying to move, that prop guard kind of works against us because it's extra wind resistance can get against it. It's just extra force that the quad has to fight. But I can't say that it's going to have much of a negative impact or how much of a negative impact it will be. And I don't know how it will mount. I suspect it will mount on the bottom of the motors just like many other prop guards do. But again, I'm rambling about something I don't have any experience with yet. I would have preferred to see, of course, a buckle on the strap, but this is super light. It's okay to deal with. I kind of thought this foam pad needed to be either thicker, because you could feel the fact that your batteries are coming down on these screws when you secure your battery down. And because this pad is foam, it doesn't really stick to the battery in any way. You do need to get a good amount of pressure down. So you may see indentations from the screws in your batteries depending upon your Hulk force applied. They did use both black wires, which kind of makes it sleek as far as the wiring for the battery lead. And they did put some heat shrink around the positive side. So not that the battery connector wouldn't have told you which side was positive, but that's kind of interesting that they used both black wires, but yet got some red heatsink on there. I thought the soldering, everything looked clean as far as nice and silver solder balls on all of our ESC connections, all 6 of them. I can see down in there where the capacitors connected and the battery leads come in. That all looks nice and shiny and soldery. These do have quite a few lights on them. If you're not familiar with FlyWoo, their electronic components tend to have more LED lights on them than other companies, so that can be an attraction, especially if you're doing some chasing inside a parking garage or at dusk or something like that, or it's just gone down on the grass and you're looking for it. That can also be handy. Yeah, it was a pretty fun experience getting to fly a Hex. I was pleasantly surprised about it. My greatest concern is about the 1.5 millimeter thickness on the frame and how that will hold up for everyone. So if you have one and you buy one and you crash one and it lives or what have you, please come back and tell me about it. Hopefully by now you've left your thoughts down in the comments section and told me what you thought coming into the video, and now that we're all the way through the video, what you're thinking at this point. More than one comment is always welcome. I do read comments and I do try to respond in some way to just about every comment that comes through the channel. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, yeah, put them down in the comments section. I appreciate your time. And thanks for watching.